Before humans built palaces, before they carved laws into stone, before kings sat above crowds and called themselves chosen by the gods, people gathered around something much older. A place, not a city, not a throne, not a market. A place where the living stood close to the dead, where firelight moved across stone, where animals were carved larger than memory, and where a group of people looked at the sky, the earth, the hunt, the storm, the bones beneath their feet, and decided that some spaces were not ordinary anymore. That is the strange beginning of temples. And the shocking part is this: humans may have built sacred places before they built true cities. For most of human history, survival came first. Food, water, shelter, fire, a sharp stone edge, a safe place to sleep. But somewhere near the end of the Ice Age, when the world was warming and wild grains were spreading across parts of the Near East, human communities began doing something that seems almost impossible. They spent enormous time and energy building places that did not simply keep out rain, places that did not store food in the most practical way, places that were not just homes. They built gathering places, ritual places, memory places, places that told everyone, this group is not just a group. This land is not just land. These dead are not gone. These animals are not just meat. This sky is not empty. The first temples were not built because early humans had extra time. They were built because humans had a new problem. How do you hold a growing community together when blood alone is no longer enough? For a small band of hunter-gatherers, society can live inside memory. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows who shared food, who lied, who helped during hunger, who ran during danger. But as groups became larger, more settled, more connected, and more dependent on seasonal gatherings, shared rules became harder to enforce. A temple helped solve that problem. Not with police, not with written law, not with money, with belief. A sacred place created a center. It gave scattered people a reason to come back to the same hill, the same enclosure, the same carved stones, the same fire-lit space, year after year. It turned strangers into participants. It turned a crowd into a community. Picture a group climbing a limestone hill thousands of years before the pyramids. They are not wearing crowns. They have no metal tools, no wheels, no riding, no domesticated horses pulling stone. Just hands, stone tools, ropes, memory, and pressure from something bigger than one family. At Göbekli Tepe, massive T-shaped pillars rose from circular enclosures. Some were carved with animals, foxes, snakes, wild boars, birds, dangerous creatures from the world around them. These were not decorations in the modern sense. To the people who made them, these animals may have carried power, fear, identity, myth, or warnings that we can no longer fully translate. And that is one of the most haunting truths about the first temples. They were built before writing, so the builders left us no explanation. No prayer carved beside the stones. No priestly instruction manual. No royal inscription saying, "I built this for the god of the hunt." Only the architecture remains. Only the labor remains. Only the choice remains. And the choice is loud. These people decided that stone should stand where stone had never stood before. They decided that bodies should gather in a planned space. They decided that certain symbols mattered enough to carve, repeat, repair, rebuild, and remember. Why? Because survival was no longer only physical, it was social. A community needs food to live, but it needs meaning to stay together. The first temples may have been machines for creating belonging. When people gathered there, they did not just watch a ritual, they became part of a story. They ate together, they worked together, they may have mourned together. They may have celebrated successful hunts, marked seasonal changes, honored ancestors, or performed rites that connected the living world with forces they could not control. Rain, disease, birth, death, animals, the sun, the return of plants, the disappearance of herds. For early humans, the world was not divided into nature and religion. A storm was not just weather. A successful hunt was not just calories. A skull beneath the floor was not just a bone. Everything could carry meaning because everything could decide whether a child lived or died. This is why the first temples were probably not quiet places of private worship. They were social engines. They pulled people into cooperation. Think about the labor itself. To quarry stone, shape pillars, drag them into position, raise them upright, and maintain a site across generations requires coordination. Someone has to organize work. Someone has to convince others that the work matters. Someone has to feed the workers. Someone has to remember the plan. Someone has to say, this is worth doing. That may be one of the deepest reasons temples came before states. A temple could organize people before a king could command them. Long before taxes, bureaucracy, and armies, sacred construction gave humans a way to practice large-scale cooperation. A group that could build a ritual enclosure could also coordinate feasts, manage seasonal gatherings, share information, arrange marriages, exchange tools, and build trust between communities. In other words, the first temples may have helped teach humans how to become civilization-ready. But there is a darker side. A sacred place does not only unite people, it can also separate them. Once a community has a special place, it also has insiders and outsiders. It has people who know the rituals and people who do not. It has stories that belong to us, not them. It has symbols that mark identity. That is powerful. And power never stays neutral for long. At first, the person who knows the ritual may simply be an elder, a healer, a storyteller, or someone trusted to handle the dead. But over time, sacred knowledge can become authority. The one who understands the calendar, the ancestors, the offerings, the proper words, the correct place to stand, that person begins to matter in a new way. The first temple may not have created the first priest immediately, but it opened the door. Because once people believe a place connects them to invisible forces, someone will eventually claim to understand those forces better than everyone else. This is where temples become more than buildings. They become early power centers, not always through oppression, often through trust. People need someone to guide rituals around birth, burial, harvest, illness, drought, and fear. But those same roles can slowly harden into status. The sacred space becomes a place where memory is controlled, where food is gathered, where offerings accumulate, where the group's emotional life is focused. And later, in the first cities of Mesopotamia, this connection becomes unmistakable. The temple is not just a spiritual place, it is an economic institution. It receives grain, it employs workers, it organizes storage, it records transactions. It stands at the heart of the city, rising above mud brick homes like a mountain humans built by hand. But that later temple economy did not appear from nothing. Its roots reach back into a much older human habit, gathering around meaningful spaces to make the world feel ordered. At Çatalhöyük, thousands of years after the earliest monumental sites, we see another version of the same deep instinct. There were no obvious royal palaces towering over the settlement, no simple division between ordinary houses and separate temples. Instead, homes themselves carried ritual life. People lived above earlier houses. They buried the dead beneath floors. They plastered walls. They decorated rooms. They rebuilt in the same place again and again. The sacred was not yet locked inside a distant institution. It was under the sleeping platform. It was in the wall. It was in the family memory. This tells us something crucial. Temples did not begin only as houses for gods. They began as places where humans negotiated their relationship with time. The dead were still present. The ancestors still mattered. The past did not disappear. It shaped the floor beneath the living. A rebuilt house was not just construction, it was continuity. A ritual enclosure was not just architecture, it was memory made visible. And that may be the most human reason of all. Humans built the first temples because we are the animal that knows time is swallowing us. Other animals build nests, dens, and hives. But humans build places for the dead, places for stories, places for invisible meanings. Places where the group can stand together and say, we were here before, we are here now, and something of us must remain after we are gone. A temple turns fear into structure. Fear of death becomes ancestor worship. Fear of hunger becomes harvest ritual. Fear of chaos becomes ceremony. Fear of being alone becomes community. The first temple was not just a building, it was a promise that the hunt had meaning, that the dead had not vanished, that the group had a center, that the world could be spoken to even if it never answered clearly. And once humans learned to build that kind of place, everything changed. Because after you build a sacred center, you can build a village around it. After you build a village around it, you can store food near it. After you store food near it, you need rules. After you need rules, you need record keepers. After you need record keepers, you need symbols. After symbols, writing. After writing, history. The first temples did not simply reflect civilization. They may have helped create the conditions for it. Not because gods physically came down and ordered humans to build cities, but because belief gave humans a reason to cooperate beyond family, beyond hunger, beyond the next day. And this is the twist. The first temples may have been built for the invisible, but their greatest power was very visible. They changed how humans treated each other. They made larger groups possible. They gave memory a location. They gave authority a stage. They gave identity a symbol. They gave fear a ritual shape. Before kings claimed divine power, before priests managed temple stores, before cities raised walls, before laws punished thieves, before writing counted grain and debt, humans had already discovered something terrifying and brilliant. A shared belief can move stone. And once belief can move stone, it can move people. That is why humans built the first temples. Not because they had solved survival, but because survival had become too big for the body alone. They needed a place where fear, death, food, memory, power, and hope could stand together. So they raised stones. They lit fires. They gathered the living. They remembered the dead. And in that sacred circle, long before empire, humanity began building the invisible architecture of civilization.